Hey everybody, welcome back to Adam Makes Beer. I've been really excited to show you what this Prost brew day looks like. We've called it Brew School because I really want to give you this, this immersive experience of being in the brewery with me. Hopefully you feel as if you had that experience. What you didn't see was the finishing of the beer. We let this ferment out at 50 degrees, slowly raising the temperature throughout, and then giving it a nice long cold lager. We're really pushing for 6-7 weeks on that. We feel like it really helps with the finished beer. It's just kind of the intangibles things on it, the crispness, the balance, all the small things that go into making these really austere beers kind of separate themselves from other versions of them. That's really what you want to be doing. These aren't huge, robust beers, so you really want to take the time for the cold lager to do all the small things right. So all the small, subtle components of this beer come together in just the right way. Right here, we have a can of Prost that I will be decanting. Here we go. Nice dark. It looks a little darker in this glass with the lighting and everything like that. It might actually even look a little bit stout-like, but it's not. If you put a light up to it, you can really get some lighter brown, even some amberish hue out of it. Foam stand is looking really nice. This is a beer that we do use that Tetra hop product on, which will add some bitterness, but also help to lift up the foam stand on it. So let's jump into the recipe on this and the tasting. One of the reasons I love this beer is you get this, it's a little bit more subtle. It doesn't have the roast character of a stout or anything like that, but you do get this light milk chocolate kind of toasty thing out of the malt coming off the beer. I wouldn't say much as far as hop nose on this beer, but then again, I don't really think you're supposed to be getting that anyhow. But man, I like this beer. To me, this is a year-round beer. I can drink this when it's hot. I can drink it in the cold winter months. It's just super satisfying. It is a smaller beer. We do this beer at 4.6%. And even though it's that small, it doesn't seem thin or lacking or anything. I do think that is in part due to a little bit higher residual sweetness in this beer. This beer does finish out at 10.14, so it does give it a little bit extra heft. And I don't think you want to take this beer too dry. I think it could make it seem a little too lean or a little too thin, but you might want to play around with that. For me, the sweet spot is finishing it out around 10.14. You get this nice round kind of milk chocolate, slightly coffee, but then it does dry out in the finish. And I think the drying out in the finish, even though we said that it has a little bit higher residual sweetness, I think it's a combination of the bitterness and some of the roast character working together to help lean this beer out a little bit. Let's jump into the grist bill for this. We're going to go all percentages today. This is a big Weyermann beer for me. So it is 66.6% Barca Munich. It's 22.2% Weyermann Munich 2. It's 7.4% malted white wheat. And it's 3.8% Carafa Special 2. I might have a couple of tenths off there somewhere, but you can do the math on it. Anyways. It's a really simple grist for this. You're going to notice there's no caramel or caramel style malts in it. I like to try to keep those out. If I did have them in there, this beer would probably need to be a little bit more bitter to hit the balance that I prefer. But we do hit a starting gravity of 1049 with this beer, and as I mentioned earlier, it does go down to 1014. In the mash, I'm looking to hit a mash rest of 154 degrees. That is a little bit on the higher side, so I will be creating a little bit more long chain sugar, non-fermentable sugar, but it's not jacked all the way up to 160 where you're going to be making this beer really unfermentable. We're looking at a total of 19 IBU in this beer. We get 15 out of it out of our 60-minute edition. And for this beer, I use 14 IBU of Warrior at 60 minutes. And then I do a 30-minute edition of Hersbrucker, German-grown Hersbrucker, for about another 5 IBU. I haven't done that beer without this edition, and I feel like it does give me a little bit more hop complexity. This is not a hop-forward beer, but as you dig into the pint, you might be able to find like a subtle amount of maybe the lightest suggestion of kind of noble hop flavor, kind of that earthy floral thing going on. But yeah, this is not something that I necessarily want to load the whirlpool up with or anything like that with hops. So really just the 60 and 30-minute edition. As always with me, I am using Imperial's Harvest Lager yeast. Again, I absolutely love that strain. Super versatile, very easy to use in the brew house. As the name might suggest, it is easy to harvest and keep a nice strong pitch going on batch after batch. I mentioned earlier a fermentation profile that I tend to do where I will pitch a beer like this at 50 degrees. I'll allow it to rise to 52 degrees at like day 2. Usually by day 5, I set it up to 55. And then at day 8, I will turn the jacket off and allow that to slowly start ramping up to 65. When this beer has hit terminal gravity and I can run a VDK or diacetyl test on it to verify that all diacetyl is gone and the beer's cleaned itself up, I will seal up the tank, put head pressure on it, and drop the temperature of that tank down to 33. After 2-3 days, I will harvest yeast off of that for another batch of lager. And then over the consequential days, if that's a term, over the next several days, I'll continue to blow remaining yeast out of the bottom of that tank as we commence that lager period. And again, we're shooting really for 6 weeks, sometimes 7 weeks for that lager. Once I get the bulk of the yeast out of the beer, I will continue once or twice a week to blow a little bit more yeast down out of the bottom of it, just because I don't want it sitting on that yeast cake and kind of picking up some dead yeast flavors or aromas. It really is a style that I love. I have to say this might be one of my favorite all-round beer styles. Anytime I can get a Dunkel from somebody, I am getting it, tasting it, and comparing it to what we're doing. It really is a kind of a favorite child of mine there at the brewery. Anyhow, if there's any questions, processes that I didn't quite hit on this video, please leave questions below. Let me know if you like this kind of deep dive series that we did here. I know it was a little bit slower paced and sometimes people like faster things, but I wanted you to give that feeling of just shadowing me on a brew day. Leave any questions or comments that you have down below. I appreciate you kind of joining us here on this whole journey with this brew day for Prost, for this brew school that we did. Anyhow, if you enjoyed this video, please give it a subscribe, share, send it over to other craft beer loving folks that you know, and hope you have a great day. Till next time, cheers.